Okay, and he asks me to go into the question, why are people doing this? And not so much why people are having sex, but I think he's referring to why are people sacred prostitutes? Why are people sacred sexuality practitioners? Why do people facilitate other people to have sexual healing? Well, I think it's like, well, why does anyone do anything in terms of like a career or a profession? One, of course, is financial gain. Although not everyone charges for this, but there are many fine practitioners who have to pay rent or mortgage, etc., and they do need income. So there can be financial part there. But I really think that what's been happening in the last 15, 20, 30 years is we've sort of opened up to more of these possibilities of sexuality being a transformative context, which we go to like a tantra teacher or a sacred sexuality practitioner. That in a sense, while we don't have the temple of the ancient religions that embrace sexuality, such as the fertility religions, we have more of a professional role evolving. It's been my observation, and especially since the internet became developed, that people who were doing this type of activity quietly behind the scenes, because at least in the United States, some types of activities would be considered illegal and not embraced, and also not embraced by one's profession, say in the massage or bodywork profession or psychological profession. So if one were doing something around sexuality and healing that was not stamped with approval, such as standard sex therapy, especially when you're doing somatic or body practices, which are not considered okay in many psychotherapeutic contexts, that people that were doing this were doing it very quietly. But with the internet, people began to realize that I'm not the only one. There are many other people doing this. And so, but not only because of the internet, but because other things happening as well, but it's been a chance for people to come out of the closet and discover that there are other people who are out of the closet. So, why do people do it? For me, I stepped into this. I was in academia. I did my hippie trip. I ended up going to massage school. And I felt that the massage profession was really in denial around sexuality. Really in denial and sex negative. And while I personally was not interested in doing happy endings or hand jobs for people, that just did not interest me, I was feeling that there's a place for people learning to do massage in their personal lives with their partner to enhance the depth and the meaningfulness of their connection, and also to really deepen the pleasurable experience that can happen. This is given my background when I evolved into massage. And so I was like called to do it because I felt like something was just totally missing. And so the way that I dealt with the relationship between sexuality, sexual energy, and massage was to start teaching classes for couples. Male-female, male-male, female-female, and did this for about 15 years across North America and Europe before I became quadriplegic. And for me, it was like a calling. I mean, incredibly satisfying to be teaching people how to be touching with awareness and nurturing. And that's my observation of a number of other sacred sexuality practitioners, that something inside them says, this is something I can do, this is something that is meaningful and very satisfying for me to do with people. And it can be incredibly transformative, incredibly meaningful to facilitate other people's opening up to their sexuality, probably because we're in such a, still, even though we have a very sexually expressive symbolism in the modern world, it's still incredibly suppressed, repressed, and oppressed. In different cultures, it's more open than others. But sexuality is something to be deepened much, much farther than we have in our general culture. It's been, at least in my observation. It's definitely better than what I call the flat-top fascist 50s, but in the 21st century, we still have a long way to go from my perspective. And especially if we want to realize how sexuality can be a transformative process for developing what we might call our spiritual nature, or enlightenment. So, anyway, I think a lot of people are doing this because they feel drawn to it, they feel called to it. And to use the past life in perspective, I think many people who are doing it now have done a variation of this, probably in previous incarnations. Who does this? Is the fourth question you presented. Who does the sexual healing? Well, in 1995, when I published the book that I had envisioned, edited, and contributed to, called Women of the Light, the New Sacred Prostitute, there were like 9 categories that different women represented in this field of the new sacred prostitute. They sort of had some labels for them. The sex surrogate, the porn star. This is not the typical porn star either. The tantric meditation teacher, the visionary artist, the masseuse, the group sex hostess, the call girl. And this is not the typical call girl either. The shaman and the nurse. The idea of that sexuality, relating to someone's sexuality, in the context of other professions, other careers, is very relevant. It's not just people who are dedicated sex workers. To facilitate a person's healing or transformation, and if we totally do not understand their sexual nature, their gender, their sexual orientation, their sexual desires, we're missing a major part of a person's existence. And this includes our spiritual growth, because many spiritual traditions are in total denial around sexuality and into a very oppressive perspective around sexuality. And my observation is, if we don't open up to our whole nature so that we can be very consciously expressing all aspects of our nature, including our sexuality, that's going to limit our growth, our enlightenment possibilities, to use a Buddhist concept. So there are people in a wide variety of practices in life that can facilitate and embrace the idea of sexuality as a part of the growing process. And some people are particularly dedicated to that. And the term I would usually use now is sacred sexuality practitioner. And going back to, well, how does it function? How does this healing in sexuality take place? The way that I came to understand merging was first by observing or being around shamans and what they were doing with my energies. I could feel things happening because I don't see energies, I feel energies. And I started noticing this, and so I thought, well, who else does this? And so there's sort of like 3 general categories of people that I began to find, given my lifestyle and my perspectives, who have a tendency to be able to do merging. First of all, shamans, by their nature being a shaman, I mean, it's one of the most integral aspects of being a shaman, is being able to merge energetically. But that doesn't mean you have to have a sexual orgasm. You've learned to literally how to radiate your energies, expand your energies in a number of different ways. And I go into this much more extensively in my documentary, Path of the Sexual Shaman. But being able to do this merging is an essential aspect to facilitate transformation. It just happens naturally during orgasm. With anybody, with everybody, when they have orgasm. But I begin to observe is that there were sort of 3 general categories. One of categories of people who do merging. One is shamans. 2, highly developed Tibetan lamas. And with direct experience of the Dalai Lama, the Lama who's in the documentary, path entitled The Sacred Prostitute, and the Karmapa, a previous incarnation, I mean face-to-face interaction. And when I read the energies of the reincarnated Karmapa, he's incredibly developed as well, and a very young person. I think he's mid-20s by now. But there was a third category, and this is where it really came home to me, was some of the people, as this field of sacred sexuality practitioner began to develop, and we began to have conferences and get to know each other, that I was feeling the people's energies as they came in to interact with me. And I realized that this is no different in some ways than what a shaman is doing, or some of these other high lamas are doing when they interact with people, that they either consciously or unconsciously, because in their focusing process to be with another person, they literally are radiating, expanding, extending, or resonating their energies in a way that their energetic systems begin to function as one. And when you begin to have that functioning as one, there is automatically, and I don't know why it happens, but it is automatically, as my observation, depending on what the situation is, of course, a clearing of energies, a balancing of energies, intensification of energies, and then often a change or transformation of those energetic patterns. And so it's not only sexual orgasm, which is available to most people, it's also the practitioners that have learned how to do this merging outside of a sexual context. It's still the same phenomena energetically. So whenever we make love or have an orgasm, particularly with another person, it's much more, it's because it's mutual focusing. And I'm talking about conscious, caring lovemaking now. That we're actually likely going to have some degree of healing or transformation taking place when another person has an orgasm. And you can have transformation, merging, without an orgasm, but that is one of the contexts. So, have some reflection on this, if you will, and realize that your local Buddhist teacher might be merging with you in a non-sexual way, as well as a shaman, or next time you see a sacred sexuality practitioner. But not all sacred sexuality practitioners have developed that ability, but I've noticed that it's more than the average population. Thank you for listening.